We turn now to a remote interview with Governor Pritzker's Chief of Staff, Caprara, who joins us via the Zoom video conference, how we're meeting all of our guests in this time of social distancing. Thank you for joining us, Ann, during what I can only imagine must be a pretty wild time over there as you're sort of behind the scenes in a war room, if you will.
Yeah, it's been a challenging few weeks, I would say, but I will say it's times like these where you really appreciate the people you work with, working for the governor, who's been a pretty steady hand throughout all of this. We started to see where this was headed probably about 3 weeks ago, and we're working to ramp up all of our activities, emergency management, IDPH, the Illinois Department of Public Health, to start tracking cases very early. And so the one thing that I am actually incredibly grateful for is the fact that we had a bit of a jump start on where we are right now in the sense that we knew this was coming and we started preparing for it as early as we could.
Well, of course, the math just shows as cases grow exponentially, those early days become vitally important as that time starts to move on. But at the same time, I don't expect there was really much of a playbook just lying around the governor's office that you just pick up and dust off and start going through it. Some of this feels like it has to be the first time for everything here. Take us back to the first part. You mentioned 3 weeks ago you started to get the read on this. When was that aha moment? When did you know, okay, we've got to jump into action here?
So, look, you've interviewed the governor, Mark. You know, he's kind of one of these guys who's up early in the morning. He's reading everything he can get his hands on. He's watching everything he can get his hands on. So I would say about 2.5 weeks ago, which frankly feels like a lifetime right now, you know, he was going into our staff meetings being like, we really have to be tracking this. Something feels like it's coming and we need to understand what it is. It was last Monday, really, where we started to see, okay, this is going to require a complete shift in our operations as a government and, frankly, as a governor's office. And that, you know, that was a little bit weird and unusual because you're right, there is no playbook for this. There's no list of things for, you know, for a pandemic where people say, okay, when you see this, when you see this, when you see this, you need to start taking these actions. But we really felt like the one chance we had, the only thing we can't get back is time. And so the one chance we had to try to get ahead of this as much as possible was to be willing to make a decision, even if it was a hard decision. And I think the governor said the other day that our decisions these days are between bad and worse. And so the really important thing is that at least make a decision so that we can move on to the next thing that we have to do. But like I said, it was last Monday where we really switched operations here. I called the entire staff together, told them, look, everything that you're doing that's not corona related needs to be put on the back burner unless it's vital to the function of the state. We started looking at what our essential personnel, even inside the governor's office, would look like, trying to understand what actions we needed to take in order to make sure that we had a continuity of government system set up here. And we're going to be able to make the difficult decisions as we encounter them.
Obviously, we're having this interview remotely right now. This is one example of ways the governor's office might be doing its business, I can only presume. But what is the governor himself doing? What are you doing to stay healthy? You have to interact with all these different agencies and businesses. I'm sure there are lawyers involved. How are you going about just the day-to-day functions in the governor's office? What's the governor doing as he has to keep doing this important job right now? But how's he holding up, and what's the morale like, and what's the overall safety protocol like there? That's got to be crimping your style a bit.
So, look, I would say morale is good. We've taken a couple of actions to make sure that we're able to function. When it comes to other agencies and other parts of the government, even on a normal week, we have to operate with offices all over the state. As you know, the governor's office has offices in Chicago and Springfield. So we're a crew that's used to working kind of all over the place and using all of the telework opportunities we have to make that work. For this situation, which again is fairly unique, what we did was for the governor's office, we went through and said, okay, who really needs to be physically in the office? And that's about 30 to 40 people right now between this office and the Springfield office. The rest of those folks we asked to work from home, which they're completely capable of doing. We have a lot of, everybody's got a computer, they've got a cell phone, they've got access to things like Zoom and other remote functioning capabilities. I sat our team down that's in the office and said, look, you come to the office, you leave the office, we're going to carpool together so that everybody has really set up almost a quarantine around the people who are coming back and forth from the office to keep us from hopefully not getting sick. We're here from about 6 or 7 a.m. until 11 midnight every night. We're trying to enforce a little bit of breaks throughout the day so that people just, the crush of work is really hard at the moment, but that they just get a little bit of a mental breather. We're working with some of the smaller local businesses here to bring in food for everybody 2 or 3 times a day so that, everyone's getting a chance to eat and eat something relatively healthy so that they're staying healthy. The governor is, he is a person that in normal times kind of operates on about 4 hours of sleep. He and I are talking early in the morning, late at night, but we're trying to be cognizant of the fact that we don't know when this is going to end, and we don't know how long our staff is going to have to be, running at this kind of a pace. So, how do we make sure that people are just taking care of themselves in a good state of mind to make really difficult decisions, and that's really important to us.
Yeah, certainly sustainability is front of mind for our own selves and people's individual energy, but also the food stockpiles, especially the front lines, medical professionals and healthcare workers there as they're trying to test capacity, make sure they have testing units and all of that. I want to get into that response in just a moment. Before I do, though, politics is always deliberative. It's always a debate. There's going to be some pushback. We've seen that even Governor Pritzker sort of putting President Trump's feet to the fire a bit on the national media circuit on Sunday last week. We're seeing some local Republicans in Illinois push back and say, wait, hold on, before we jump to take some of these urgent matters, we want to have a say here too. So there's always going to be some of that debate here. So as the governor takes this information in from Dr. Ezike and others, these medical experts, what is the protocol? What is the decision-making matrix here as he's sort of looking at the time element and also wanting to weigh the bigger matters of how can we actually go forward with an election on one hand or with shutting down bars and restaurants on the other? How take us through that decision-making process there. How is he actually making those calls?
Sure. Well, I would start with science is at the top of our list. We convened a little over a week ago a meeting with the top hospital doctors, epidemiologists, modelers to just talk us through what does the spread of infection look like? How quickly can we expect this to happen? And what are the mitigation efforts that we have to take that have been proven effective in other places, other countries? You're hearing a lot about Italy and South Korea and China and what each of those countries are doing. We generally operate under an assumption, given the information we've been given, that we're about 16 days behind Italy in terms of what this country is dealing with and what the places that have more cases are dealing with. So that's the first part of it. What is the science telling us? We have multiple calls a day. We have a morning check-in call. We have a midday check-in call. We have the 2:30 briefing, which really does drive for us, what information are we trying to get out to the public on a day-by-day basis. We have an evening check-in call. We have IEMA and IDPH on those calls so that we're hearing from the emergency management professionals and the doctors telling us, okay, what needs to happen next. And then I would say that there are all these outside experts that both the governor and myself are trying to make sure that we touch base with. He's been on daily calls with other governors from other states. I get on a phone call with chiefs of staff from some surrounding states and also from a few other states across the country. That has been enormously helpful because, frankly, those calls include states where the infection rate is further along than where we are and further back than we are. And there is a real effort, it's very bipartisan, to say, to the states that are further along, they get on and they say, look, here's the things that we're dealing with today. And for the states that are further back, we give them, hey, this is what we're dealing with today. This is what you can expect. We really do operate under the, what would you have liked to know like 5 or 6 days ago, a week ago. And then there's just the global health experts that really are making themselves available, particularly to governors right now. And so the governor's on the phone with a lot of those folks, just, getting their best information, understanding what's going on. We're keeping really in track with like what public information is being put out there right now. There was a study released just 2 days ago by I have it right here, the Imperial College over in the UK about the effect of non-pharmaceutical interventions. I feel like I'm back in college a little bit, to reduce COVID-19 mortality and healthcare demand. I mean, this came out the other night. I emailed it around to our entire senior staff and the governor and said, read this. We need to evaluate how we're using this for our own response. I think you said it in the beginning. The effort really is, how can we stay 1 or 2 or 3 steps ahead of where this virus is going? And that means, frankly, making some difficult decisions that people are not all going to agree with. Our sincere hope is that at the end of this, everybody says, you guys overreacted, because the infection rate, the mortality rate is lower than it might have been.
Well, and that would be a sign that some of those steps might have been effective, might have worked. But in these uncertain times, when the general order of things is certainly discombobulated a bit, and in the void of that regular structure that we all fall prone to, we are witnessing truly what is an unprecedented exercise of executive power here, as the governor is sort of left to little other option, jumping in here and saying, okay, we're going to shut down schools, and then we're going to shut down bars and restaurants to dining there. There's even some lawmakers saying they've heard, and I don't know if you'd consider this a rumor or if this is something you're actively considering, but a shelter in place. We're seeing some of those discussions in New York and about whether or not that extreme measure might have to happen here. So understanding the time that you're taking into consideration here, trying to save lives, and understanding the medical advice, how certain are you that the governor has a legal right and the authority to do all of this, or is it more just act now and do that court thing later?
It is not act now and do that court thing later. I think you even saw the discussion over the elections the other day. We have a team of lawyers who sit here, and before we take any action, they walk through, do we think this is within our constitutional powers? Do they think this is within the governor's emergency powers? That is very important to us, because we're weighing 2 things. We're weighing keeping people safe and healthy, but also our government and our democracy has to continue. It has to be robust. It is just in these times, it's most important in these times when things seem to be chaotic and difficult, that we, actually cling to the Constitution and the powers that are enumerated to the governor. A lot of the things that we've put out, and I think the governor has said this over and over again, we are asking Illinoisans to step up and make decisions for their own lives, their own businesses, their own, their own communities, about how to keep everybody safe. We dealt with this over the weekend with St. Patrick's Day. We were trying to get everybody to stay in and not go out. We did see some folks at the bars, and that prompted us to take a little bit more of a strict measure. But at the same time, we don't have a police force in Illinois that's going to be able to go out and enforce some sort of, lockdown. That's not what we're looking at. That's not what we're considering. But what we are considering is asking people really to limit their daily activities to just what's absolutely essential, to understand that even if you are young and healthy and you feel great, that you may be a carrier for this, and you may take it to somebody who is not young and healthy and who actually is immunocompromised or in a vulnerable population. But look, I know it's chaotic. I know it is scary for everybody, but understand that inside here, we're walking through every step of the way with a sense of purpose, with a respect for the rule of law, with a conversation that is happening with our legislators, our co-equal branches of government, our federal partners. It is a bipartisan conversation to understand, what's happening in individual communities. How can these communities step up? And by the way, we have seen these communities step up. When we had to close schools, I'm really hardened. I get texts all day long from legislators and other folks who are out helping deliver meals, helping make sure kids eat every day, taking care of older people who can't go out. We've been talking to the grocery stores about how they ensure an opportunity for older folks to shop in a safe manner. And we're going to talk, I think the governor's going to talk about that today in his 2:30 press conference. The one thing I would also add, there are a ton of rumors out there, and I would encourage everybody to just take a deep breath. The governor is briefing everybody every day at 2:30. He's there, and he's going to be there for as long as he needs to be there. If you don't hear him say it at the 2:30, then at this point in time, it's not happening. Now, circumstances are changing every 24 hours. I mean, I live my life right now in about 15-minute increments.
Has that shelter-in-place question come across his desk? Has he had to consider that yet?
It definitely has come across his desk. Look, we're working on understanding what our trigger points are for different measures. But the one thing I do know is whatever we do in the next week, a lot of it is going to be dependent on individual Illinoisans, their communities, and the folks that are respected and trusted in those communities to help say, hey, we need to be inside. We need to cut down on, we need to really encourage people to adhere to the social distancing guidelines. That's what's going to, reduce the infection rate, and that's what's going to lead us to the end of this.
All right, and yeah, those 2:30 daily press briefings have included a whole lot of information, and especially I've noticed the governor weaves in some anecdotes, some stories, some uplifting or inspiring moments that he's observed where the community comes together to try and help each other through this tough time. So for those people who have not tuned in online or elsewhere on broadcast, there is a lot of helpful information and perhaps reassuring information that there are experts looking at this and guiding it from the bird's eye view. Before we let you go, there is the constant drumbeat in Illinois, the reminder that this state, perhaps more than any other, was least prepared for a fiscal downturn. We seem to be staring down the barrel of just that right now. The governor was just saying we got to have a rainy day fund in his budget address. For moments just like this, is there an eye on the long view here? Perhaps a deputy governor? Is there somebody that while the governor is looking at all these short-term, immediate, we got to act now moments, is there a long-term view here, and how is the state adjusting its expectations for what we can expect will be a decline in tax revenues, things that might impact the long-term fiscal outlook of the state here?
That's absolutely something that we're taking a look at, and you said it. Deputy Governor Dan Hines, along with a number of other folks inside the governor's office who work on fiscal matters for us, and in conjunction with some of our other constitutional officers, we are taking a look at what we're going to need to do down the line to make sure our economy is in a good place when we come out of this. I mean, look, I think we all understand that the economy of the entire United States is going to be under duress over the next 6 months, at least, as we deal with this. And it is a completely unprecedented situation. But I think there are a couple of things that we know we can do. Pat Collier, who works for us in Washington, D.C., keeps in touch with our federal folks. And I have to just give a big shout out to the staffs of Senator Durbin and Duckworth, who have been really banging the drum on what kind of federal assistance and help can we get, what kind of when this stimulus package makes its way through the Congress, what is Illinois going to get out of that? Look, all of our industries, our small businesses, they're going to need help, they're going to need assistance, and we'll figure out how to get through this as a government. But I would say, again, this is another area where everybody has a role to play. If you're still getting a paycheck and, and able to work, pay the small service vendors who come and do work for you, even if they're not able to come in and do that work right now. Make sure that you're ordering from your local restaurants. Do what you can to help people at this moment in time, because that's going to matter to getting people through this. But look, there will be another side of this. There's going to be a little bit of a new normal for a while, and we're all going to have to figure out how to adjust to that. We have people in this office right now who are not focused on the immediate emergency, who are thinking about the long-term economic impact, so that we can be ready to deal with that when we get there. But again, our communities need to lift each other up. We need to all see, what can we do to help our neighbor, to help our friend, to help the small business down the street. There are a lot of opportunities for that right now, and we need to be doing it.
All right, and I know you've got a lot on your plate as you organize the governor's schedule and keep all of that going and sort of keeping people, all the soldiers at the front lines there, organizing everything. You've been very generous in your time and in your answers with us here today. Thanks for joining us, and stay well. Be safe.
Thanks, Mark. You too.
All right, we're back in just a moment with Senator Julie Morrison, the vice chair of the Senate Public Health Committee. And she also used to run a food pantry, how she's looking to revitalize her corner of the state and make sure that people have enough food to eat. We're back in a moment.